crosshair placement, counter strafing, grind aim training. If you've heard these terms 1,000 times and you want to die if you hear it again, then you've come to the right place. Hi, I'm Coach Mills, and today we're going to be going over 5 tips to improve at Valorant and climb all the way to Immortal and beyond that don't include aim. So if you want to improve and you're tired of hearing a million aim tips, this is the perfect video for you. Smash that like and subscribe and go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality in-depth guides based on esports, in-depth game sense, positioning, and much, much more. Do yourself a favor, go check it out right now. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, getting good aim is a long process. You're not gonna watch a couple of tip videos and then wake up tomorrow with aim like 10s. It's just not gonna happen. And while there are definitely aim things that you can improve on to set yourself up for success in improving your aim altogether, I feel like the vast majority of Valorant guides, including our own channel, has been beating that dead horse worse than Glenn got beat by Negan back in Walking Dead season, what was it, 7? The season that everyone stopped watching. Tangent aside, let's jump into some other ways that you could improve individually and start to become a better player and get more value and win more games outside or completely separate from your aim. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is that there are many ways to find value, and they're not all just about aim. The first thing, the most obvious thing, is ability perfection. Now, a lot of people think that there are 2 types of ability users. There's people that just throw it out with no thought to it, and then there's average Jonas with his freaking million rollouts on Sova. Well, it's actually just a giant spectrum, and while yes, you could completely master or go above and beyond an ability use, I'm not saying that you have to just go all in and learn everything. That could be completely overwhelming. What I am saying is that you could work on things very slowly, one at a time with your abilities. Every single day, maybe learn 1 more shock rollout that you didn't know, or maybe 1 paint shells bounce and make sure that it's optimally placed to explode on default plant zone. Now, the trick is to only give yourself a little bit to work on at a time, and don't move on until you've perfected whatever the first thing that you learned, and then you've incorporated it actually in your games. Another thing that's really important is to track how many times you mess up or die while using an ability or ultimate. Let's say the enemy did plant default plant zone, you tried to raise paint shells, you thought the rollout was right, but for some reason, the enemy actually got away scot-free. You obviously messed up in some key ways, so maybe it might be best for you to go into training room or to relearn the rollout because you actually did it wrong, and unless you can consistently do it in your games, it's not something that you can rely on, and it's not something that's going to give you consistent value over the course of your many ranked games. Another thing is ultimates. How many times have you tried to use an ultimate and the ultimate actually converted into a round win, or how many times have you used your ultimate and you simply just, it wasn't enough to win the round? Now, of course, there's not always a direct correlation. It's not like, hey, I lost the round, obviously I used my ultimate incorrectly. That's not always true because you can mess up in a number of other ways and your teammates can as well. What I mean by this is it's perfectly reasonable that you might have used an ultimate at a perfect time, but because of other factors, you lost the round. That being said, if there are many scenarios where you keep investing your ultimate into a round that you didn't win, then essentially you're wasting that ultimate over and over again, and it's a mistake that you can correct. Now, I know what you're saying right off the bat. Learning ability rollouts and trying to master my ultimate usage, this is kind of boring and it's extensive. I have to go look at videos and do research and all this stuff. Well, like I said, it shouldn't actually take you very much time at all if you're just taking it bit by bit, only as much as you're comfortable with before your games, making sure to try to incorporate the tips you learn in every single game you play. And then past that, the next question you got to ask yourself is, are you really stuck or are you really just not trying very hard to improve? Are you trying to get to a high rank the easy way? Well, you're probably not going to get there if that's your mentality, unfortunately. But moving on to the next big improvement tip that is actually going to really help you along, and one of the big reasons that a lot of people are missing their shots, and I know, it's not freaking an aim tip. This is not an aim tip at all, because the reason that you're missing shots is not because of your aim, actually. It's because of the pressure involved with shooting. A lot of people are very consistent when, they don't even care. They're listening to music playing free-for-all, they can click heads, or they're just shooting at bots, they can always click heads. But when they go into a game, when there's pressure on the line, when they care about their rank, all of a sudden, they're missing even simple shots, even against enemies that are not looking at them, and they're throwing a lot. Well, the thing is, performing under pressure is actually a skill. It's something that you actually have to learn how to do, and not everybody can innately do it, and that's the same way it is in life. Everyone has to learn how to handle the pressure, because pressure means there's stakes, and stakes means there is actually more punishment for your mistake. Maybe because the weight of the game is on the line. Maybe because of the weight of the round is on the line, and your rank is on the line as a result. That's all additional pressure stacking on top of each other. Now, the first thing that you need to understand when it comes to dueling pressure, like you versus an enemy, you need to first understand that there is a lot more time than you think. A lot of people really rush. They really rush a duel, even when it's not about aim. It's just about seeing an enemy and punishing them when they don't even know you're there. You don't need to rush, and sometimes even if they see you, their time to kill is actually not as fast as you think. Go run around a deathmatch for a while without shooting at anyone, and I want you to notice or take note of how long it actually takes for enemies to kill you and how much time you really had when you weren't freaking hyper panicking and just whiffing all your shots. The next thing that you need to understand is the competitive mentality. Pros and high-level players care about ranked more than anything, but they don't let pressure affect their play. Now, that might seem like an oxymoron. You might think, hey, if they care more about the game than anyone else, wouldn't they have more pressure on them than anyone else? Well, that might be true in some ways, but the key difference is that competitive mentality that I'm talking about. They realize in the grand scheme of things, things like rank and how you perform in a ranked setting don't ultimately matter, but they choose to care about it anyways. They're not caring about it because of outside forces or some mandate that they have to reach a certain rank in order to stay a pro. That typically or basically never happens. What they're doing instead is they're holding themselves to a certain regard, and any pressure that they put on themselves is self-pressure. However, they don't let it get to the point where it's actually affecting their in-game performance, and many times pros will take a step back, relax, take days off, or do whatever they have to ensure that the pressure doesn't eat them too hard and it actually affects their performance in game. Something I would really suggest for those of you who deal with competitive anxiety, because that's something that basically comes in every game where you really like the rank you're at and you're scared to lose it. So you feel really anxious to even want to play because you're scared you're going to drop out. And if you do play, sometimes you are just so under pressure, you're so scared of messing up because it's going to lose you your rank that it's just basically becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? One thing or one tip I would highly suggest is actually getting a secondary account, and not to smurf on, but to play as hard as you possibly can and climb it to the exact same rank that your main is at. Let's say that you are a gold 2 player, right? Get your alternate account to gold 1, gold 2, and play on the lower of the two accounts until that account reaches the same or surpasses the other account, and then jump back and forth until you meet threshold after threshold. And that way you always have an account that's higher rank, you always have an account, and you always get validated by the fact that you deserve a higher rank because you have one on the other account, and you're never going to get too hit with that competitive anxiety because even if you lose, you still have another account that's higher. This is typically what I like to call the hopscotch ranked method, and I think it's overall a really good strategy for those who deal with competitive anxiety. And the next thing that you need to understand is that you should be taking smarter engagements, especially engagements that you have the advantage in. And you might say right off the bat, okay, I don't understand what you mean when you say a smart engagement or smart value. What do you mean by that? Okay, I want you to answer a question for me. How many times have you ever died to a wall bang, or getting sprayed through a smoke, or by an enemy that you never got to shoot back at? All those scenarios are what you need to try to use on the enemy. These are things that are inherently powerful, but they are not duels. They are instead based on game sense and decision making, things that you would find in many other games, even games like MOBAs, not necessarily just about the actual shooting itself. You see, there are many of these scenarios that come up where you can punish enemies based on things that don't require extensive mechanical skill, but instead requires you to have good understanding of what's going on, aka high amounts of game sense, and that's what you can really incorporate into your games and something that you can constantly be pushing yourself to do better. Now, what I suggest you to do is actually, instead of watching only the streamers that are very flashy, start to watch some streamers that are more intelligent with their gameplay and really take note of some of the decisions that they do that actually get them value, even though it's not just point, click, take a duel, wide swing and angle, and things like that. Now, of course, the last part of this is just to abuse guns in scenarios where they are favored. You're on a save round and you can afford a Bucky, abuse the angles that the Bucky is extremely good in. And here's something that is extremely important for you to understand. Some guns require actually very little practice time relative to other guns to get decent enough to make the gun very strong. A weapon like a Bucky, for instance, is something that you can learn as long as you learn the optimal range and you can hit a right-click neck level. You can just be a god at a Bucky and get tons of value at it, and you can do that in a single day. Now, you take a whole bunch of different guns that are good in different scenarios, and you just spend a little bit of time every single day just mastering these guns. Instead of just deciding on a whim round after round what gun you're going to use, that is the way to become a lot more proficient than the average. And because you're going to be more proficient than the average, you're going to be better and you're going to climb out of the rank you're in. Now, the next thing that you got to understand, this is really, really hard, but I know that you can do it if you really focus and try, and it's to be disciplined with your games. And what do I mean by discipline? Well, the first thing that you need to understand is that nothing is an auto loss. And I know it sometimes can feel like a game is automatically lost. You lose 4 rounds in a row, someone's toxic, and the game just starts going down freaking hill. Well, I want you to ask yourself something. How many times have you been rolling an enemy team? You might have 7 rounds on them, and then out of nowhere, nothing happened with your team, but out of nowhere, the enemy team started performing well. And then out of nowhere, they're tied with you, and then they win the game. I know for a fact that this has happened to many of you. In fact, it's happened to all of you. Now, do you not think that the enemy team was probably toxic? Yeah, they were probably toxic to each other. Do you not think that the enemy team thought that multiple members on their team were throwing? Yeah, that was probably true too. Now, somehow, the enemy team that was down so hard and was probably toxic, self-destructing, managed to come back, and typically, here's how it happens. A couple of games go well in isolation, and that snowballs in the opposite direction. Maybe your team got a little bit too complacent, pushed in, or maybe the enemy team, one person popped off, one person focused up, and you need to understand that your specific impact can have a snowball's effect some percentage of the time on a game that might seem like an auto loss. Basically, I'm saying that it's always worth it to try your best into the very, very end. And another thing about this is make sure that you're never setting yourself up on the wrong foot when you're entering your games. Always warm up. Make sure that you never enter a game feeling like a subpar version of yourself. You don't want to say, man, my aim feels really off right now. You don't want to say, oh man, I didn't warm up, that's why we're losing. You're already actually creating your failure when you start thinking like this, and the best way to just get rid of that altogether is just to do your due diligence, warm up ahead of time so that you can perform to your best ability in game. Now, the last and most important tip that I got for you in the entire video about improving, and it's just to realize that for many, including you, including me, including everyone, it's a marathon and it's not a race. A lot of people want that secret sauce. No, not what I get your mother. What I'm talking about is that little 5-minute video that they watch one time, and then all of a sudden, all their prayers are answered. They're popping off, they're ranking up, they climb all the way to Radiant, they beat 10s, they get signed as a pro player, and that's it. They beat Valorant. But the reality is, improving is something that is much more similar, like I said, to a marathon, not a sprint. You see, I see a lot of comments of people just saying, hey, ranked sucks, I'm giving up, I'm not even playing ranked anymore. And here's the thing, a lot of people might be ahead of you, but they're gonna give up all the same. And if you are diligent and you are constantly working on yourself, you will surpass them. And I'm talking about all kinds of improvement: game sense, positioning, ability use, ultimate use, being a better communicator, your aim, of course, and much, much more. These are things that slowly but surely improve little by little by little. But here's the thing that can happen if you do not give up, and it's the snowball. Eventually, things are all gonna connect together. It's like a spider web of all these ideas and all these little bits of improvement that are all scattered. And eventually, as they connect, the snowball is gonna form, and all that improvement is just going to basically burst through. And you're gonna be better than you've ever been. You're gonna be improving like you've never had. And all you have to do is keep trying and not give up until you reach that breaking point. Now, I'm not saying it's gonna be easy or it's gonna happen overnight, but what I am saying is it's really important to look at the big picture. It's like you're filling up a giant, giant bucket with little grains of sand. And every little grain of sand is a little bit of improvement. And I know it can be frustrating when it feels day after day you're not able to improve, but I assure you, you are. It's just really hard to see unless you take a step back, look at the big picture, and really notice how far you've come from where you came from. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for in-depth guides, advanced tips and tricks, VOD reviews. We got tons of tools if you really want to improve, if you really want to climb. We got a lot of different tools on the website that is dedicated to help you do it. So do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for coming by. That's all I got for you today. I love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.